Hello, my name is Laura. It's been a minute! Oh my god, let's catch up. Let's just ignore the fact that I was gone for 6 months. I disappeared? No, I didn't. What are you talking about? I started listening to a true crime audiobook in May of this year. Had never read one before, didn't really know much about the true crime book genre. I love true crime documentaries. Ever since Making a Murderer came out in like 2017, 2018, I've been obsessed with them, but I never thought to look into true crime novels. But that all changed with The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. I listened to the audiobook on Scribd and then I loved it so much. It was actually my favorite book of the year so far that I went and bought a physical copy. And I bought a lot of other physical copies too in the genre. Let's get into it, shall we? I'm going to start off with the book that started it all. The one I already showed you, The Stranger Beside Me, which is by Anne Rule. Anne Rule was approached and asked to write a novel about a series of murders that was happening in her area by an unknown man. The killer had not been caught at this point. The people investigating this case end up getting info from a few surviving victims that the person that they should be looking for is driving a Volkswagen Beetle and his name is Ted. Anne Rule is like, oh shit, I have a friend named Ted who drives a Volkswagen Beetle and he looks just like the description, the illustration that they're putting around. Who is it but her friend Ted Bundy? So Anne Rule has been writing about these string of murders and they still haven't caught the man, and now she's thinking, oh my god, it's my friend. Like, imagine that happening to you. Imagine Karen down the road who you go over to every Sunday morning for an Irish breakfast. This book was the best book I've read so far this year. It's actually the only book I've given 5 stars to so far this year. It was brilliant. I highly recommend it. She was an amazing writer. The next book that I'm going to show you is one that I actually finished yesterday. It's I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. Michelle McNamara was a true crime journalist who was extremely dedicated to trying to find out the identity of who she called the Golden State Killer. This was a man who killed 10 people and committed over 50 sexual assaults, breaking into houses over, I think, a 10-year period, ruining people's lives and getting away with it for like 40 years. Michelle actually only passed away a short while before they eventually found him. I didn't enjoy this as much as I thought that I was going to. I think my expectations were just too high for this one. That's okay. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Next I have, Mindhunter and Journey into Darkness, both by John Douglas and Mark Olshaker. I have read Mindhunter, I've yet to read Journey into Darkness. This is a sequel. I don't know if it's necessary to read it, but Mindhunter is the main star of the show. I can't explain how much I've fallen in love with John Douglas. I am obsessed with this man. John Douglas is a retired FBI detective who went around to multiple prisons in the 80s and talked to multiple serial killers and all different types of criminals. You probably noticed the little Netflix sticker here. The Netflix show Mindhunter is based off of John Douglas and his partner. He's just so interesting to me. I find that the way that his mind works and the way that he just picks up on clues that I was going to say that I would never be able to, but I mean, he's a professional. I know nothing. But it's just the way that he views scenes and the way that he analyzes people. I just find it so fascinating. I think he's such a cool guy. And I can't wait to read Journey into Darkness. Yes, God. Next, I'm going to show you the books that I haven't read yet, so I don't really know a lot about a lot of these, I'm not gonna lie. I'll tell you what I know. So the first one is Devil's Knot by Mara Leverett. There is a documentary. It's called, is it called the West Memphis 3? West of Memphis? It could be West of Memphis. I watched it a few weeks ago with my mom and it blew my mind. This story is absolutely insane. If you don't know the West Memphis 3, they were 3 young men in America who were convicted of killing a group of young boys. It was kind of obvious that there was no evidence to link them to this case, but there was nobody else that they could think to link to it. So they pretty much put the blame on these 3 young men and ruined their lives and put them in prison. The documentary is really, really interesting, so I'm really excited to read the book. And actually the author was in the documentary a little bit, so I kind of got to see how she views, whose side she's on, basically. They finally got out of prison a few years ago and now they can finally live normal lives, semi-normal lives, but their youth was completely ruined and taken away from them. And it's just disgusting to see how little they had to pin on these lads, but they convicted them anyway. It would just make you sick. So I'm really excited to read this because I feel very passionately about this story. Next, I have one of the most famous true crime novels of all time. It's In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. I know nothing about this, but I am excited to read it. Next Next I have JonBenet by Steve Thomas and Don Davis. If you don't know about JonBenet, JonBenet Ramsey was a 6-year-old girl who was brutally murdered in her own home. A lot of people believe that her younger, I believe he was her younger brother, he could have been slightly older, but he was still a child as well, like her. A lot of people believe that he murdered her. It's so sad that it still has never really been solved. I find it so interesting that it's written by one of the main detectives on the case. I feel like he'll be able to tell us a lot more than a documentary ever could, because he was there. My next book is The Phantom Prince, My Life with Ted Bundy by Elizabeth Kendall. Elizabeth Kendall was in a serious relationship with Ted Bundy for 6 years, and it's about her and her daughter's experience living with him and kind of living with a man that was a character, this whole other side to him that seemed very pure and innocent and kind and nothing like what he actually was, which was an absolute monster. My last one on Ted Bundy, I promise, I'm sorry for putting you through this, is Ted Bundy, The Only Living Witness. This is by Stephen G. Machoud and Hugh Ainsworth. These two authors are the two journalists that got to interview Ted Bundy hours before he was put to death. They interviewed him in death row, and they were talking to him for days. What I've heard from this is that they really don't glorify him in any way. They don't put him on a pedestal. They don't talk about him like he's a celebrity. They talk about him how he actually was, which, like I said, was just an evil... Let's not get into it. This next one sounds insane. It sounds absolutely amazing. It's Chase Darkness with Me by Billy Jensen. This book is basically Billy Jensen, who is not a detective, but he's a journalist who gets extremely fed up with the fact that there are so many murder cases left unsolved, and so he takes it upon himself, after the death of his friend Michelle McNamara, who wrote I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which I showed you earlier. He takes it upon himself to start solving the murders himself, and he does. He solves multiple murders. I just think these kinds of people are amazing. The level of detail and attention that they pay to cracking these cases from home is just insane. It's amazing. I just think this sounds class. It sounds so cool. And I think he's a badass. Well, I haven't read it yet, but he sounds like a badass. Anyway, next I have The Road to Jonestown, Jim Jones and People's Temple by Jeff Gwynne. My cousins were over the other day and I was showing them all the books that I bought recently in true crime. Not that they cared, but this one popped up and my cousin Shona said, oh my god, we had to study him in school. They were basically being taught how to avoid being pulled into a cult because they're starting college in September. I never got taught that in religion class. Okay, education, give me nothing. I know very little about him. I just know that she wants me to read it as soon as possible. Actually, he was brought up in I'll Be Gone in the Dark yesterday, and what he did, he is responsible for killing 909 people by pulling them into his cult, kind of taking them to a place that was pretty much completely isolated from the rest of society and poisoning them. 900 people. I thought it was a typo. I thought she meant to write 90. It sounds absolutely terrifying. I mean, what, that sounds like a horror story. I mean, it is a horror story. It's just that it's true. Lastly, I have American Predator by Maureen Callahan. A lot of my friends on Goodreads have said that this is the most gruesome, terrifying, horrific story that they've ever read, which freaks me out. I have really started to scare the shit out of myself reading true crime novels. I constantly think somebody's watching me even though I never leave the house. I always think there's somebody in the house when I'm by myself. I am always terrified to go out to the washing machine in case there's someone in my garden. It's just not ideal. Will I keep doing it? Yes. Definitely the best that I recommend out of the ones that I have read is The Stranger Beside Me. If you can listen to the audiobook on Scribd, do that. I recommend it. So yes, that is the vibe. They are the books. If you have any recommendations for me, please leave them down in the comments. If you have any like documentary recommendations or podcast recommendations, they are very welcome. I would love them. Please give them to me. I am currently reading Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb with my friend Kate. We read the first book back in, I think, March or April. And we really enjoyed it, so we have been dying to read this ever since. So we're reading it this month. I think it's like 8 chapters a week or something, so it's like 160 pages a week and we'll have it done. I just want to say before I go that lots of people were subscribing and talking to me on Instagram and leaving me lovely comments while I was away the past like 6 or 7 months, and being really, really nice even though I wasn't posting, and making sure that I was okay. And that was just so nice. I have become friends with so many of you through making videos, and that has been like the best part of it all. So yeah, thanks for being nice. It's so nice being a part of the booktube community. Everybody is so lovely so far. It's been really, really fun. I really appreciate every single comment that you leave, every recommendation that you leave, every time anyone messages me to make sure that I'm alive. That's really nice. So yes, I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye, children of the corn. Yeah.